There are places in this world where nature still reigns supreme. Deep in the heart of the African rainforest, untouched by time, lies a forgotten land. A place where legends breathe and shadows watch. A place where something lurks. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient trees, their twisted roots clawing through the jungle floor like grasping fingers. The cries of unseen creatures echo through the dense canopy, a haunting symphony of the unknown. Travelers who dare to venture too far from the beaten path speak of an eerie sensation, a weight pressing down on their chests, as if the jungle itself is alive and watching. The villagers who live on the edge of this untamed wilderness have known this feeling for generations. They do not speak of it freely, but when asked, their eyes darken with something between fear and reverence. They whisper of a presence that moves through the trees, unseen but always there. Some call it a guardian, a spirit bound to the land, protecting its sacred inhabitants. Others claim it is something far more sinister, something ancient and restless, lurking in the shadows, waiting for those who dare to trespass. Whatever it is, one thing remains certain: those who enter this jungle do not always return. The gorilla forest is not marked on ordinary maps. It is hidden deep within the heart of Central Africa, where the jungle grows so thick that sunlight barely touches the ground. Towering trees stretch toward the sky, their branches tangled together like skeletal fingers, forming a canopy so dense that even during the day, the forest remains cloaked in twilight. The air is humid, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The silence is eerie, broken only by the occasional distant cry of a monkey or the rhythmic drumming of unseen wings. But those who have spent time here say it is not the jungle's natural sounds that are unsettling. It is the unnatural ones, the whispers that come from nowhere, the footsteps that vanish the moment you turn around, the feeling that something is always just beyond the edge of your vision, watching, waiting. For centuries, the local villagers have warned outsiders to stay away. They tell stories of those who have wandered too far into the jungle, ignoring the old warnings, and were never seen again. The few who have returned speak of strange sights, shadowy figures moving between the trees, the sudden and overwhelming scent of rot, the sensation of unseen eyes piercing through the darkness. Some believe the spirits of the jungle's ancestors still walk these paths, bound to the land they once protected. Others whisper of something more primal, something that has been here long before humans, something that does not take kindly to intruders. The legend of the gorilla forest's guardian has been passed down through generations. Some claim it is the spirit of a fallen warrior, cursed to roam the jungle for eternity, ensuring no harm comes to its sacred inhabitants. Others believe it is an ancient force of nature itself, neither good nor evil, only vengeful toward those who dare to disrespect its domain. Hunters tell of times when their bullets would not fire, their traps would spring empty, and their paths would lead them in circles, as if the jungle itself was shifting to protect its own. Those who ignore the warnings, those who take what does not belong to them, are said to disappear without a trace, their final screams swallowed by the endless sea of green. Despite the stories, some still dare to enter, drawn by curiosity, greed, or the pursuit of knowledge. Scientists, explorers, and poachers alike have all tried to unravel the mysteries of the gorilla forest. Some return with stories too terrifying to believe. Others never return at all. What lies within the depths of this haunted wilderness? What force guards its secrets so fiercely? And most importantly, what happens when someone refuses to leave? In the summer of 2019, a team of researchers set out on an expedition into the gorilla forest. Led by Dr. Michael Carter, a renowned primatologist, their mission was simple: study the behaviors of an elusive silverback family that had rarely been observed by humans. Equipped with high-tech cameras, tracking devices, and months of preparation, They believed they were ready for anything. But nothing could have prepared them for what they would encounter in the heart of the jungle. From the very first day, something felt wrong. The deeper they ventured, the quieter the forest became. It wasn't just the usual stillness of nature. It was something unnatural, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. The gorillas, usually curious or cautious around human visitors, behaved strangely. They were restless, eyes darting toward the treetops, ears twitching at sounds the researchers couldn't hear. The dominant silverback, an enormous male named Koba, let out warning calls, not toward the humans, but toward something unseen in the shadows. It was as if the gorillas were afraid, not of the researchers, but of something else that lurked beyond their sight. Then came the footprints. Late one evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and darkness swallowed the forest, one of the team members, Alex Monroe, noticed something unusual near their campsite. A set of tracks in the mud, deep, wide, and unlike anything they had seen before. They were not gorilla prints, nor did they match any known animal in the region. What was more disturbing was that the prints led directly toward their tents, and then vanished, as if whatever had made them had simply disappeared into thin air. That night, the unease turned into something far worse. At exactly 2:43 a.m., their motion-triggered cameras picked up movement just outside the camp. A figure, tall, hunched, with elongated limbs, moved between the trees. But when they checked the footage, the image was blurred, distorted, as if the very air around it was warping. Moments later, Alex awoke to the sound of heavy breathing right outside his tent. He froze, his heart pounding. The breathing was deep, guttural, almost human, but not quite. With trembling hands, he reached for his flashlight and unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. Nothing. Only the dense blackness of the jungle. But just as he exhaled in relief, a low guttural growl rumbled from the darkness, so close he could feel it vibrate in his chest. The next morning, the team found more signs that something had been near their camp. Large claw marks gouged into the trunks of trees, claw marks too big to belong to any known predator in the region. One of their supply crates had been overturned, its contents scattered as if something had searched through it. But what sent a shiver through every member of the team was what they found near the edge of the clearing. A single handprint pressed into the damp earth. It was human. Almost. The fingers were too long, the shape slightly distorted, as if whoever or whatever had left it behind wasn't entirely like them. The warnings of the villagers echoed in their minds. Something was watching them, something that did not want them there. And it was only the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the jungle became an ocean of darkness. The research team huddled near their campfire, their voices hushed, their eyes darting toward the trees. The feeling of being watched had grown unbearable. Every rustling leaf, every distant animal call sent a wave of unease through the group. Dr. Carter tried to reassure them. Perhaps it was just a large predator passing through, a leopard or a hyena. But deep down, they all knew this was something else. The gorillas had disappeared from sight, not just one or two, but the entire family. It was as if they had sensed something the humans could not and fled before nightfall. And then, the screams began. A piercing guttural howl echoed through the forest. It was unlike anything they had ever heard before, part animal, part human, but distorted, stretched into something unnatural. It came from deep within the trees, yet seemed to surround them all at once. The team grabbed their flashlights, their beams cutting through the thick fog that had begun to settle. The jungle, once filled with the hum of insects and distant animal calls, had fallen into complete silence. Then the sound of snapping branches. Something was moving, something big. Alex turned, his flashlight shaking in his hands. Just beyond the tree line, a shadow shifted, a tall, looming figure standing perfectly still, just out of reach of the light. He tried to focus, to make sense of what he was seeing, but the moment his light landed on it, it was gone. Then chaos. The tents shook violently as if something massive had slammed into them. A deafening, guttural roar tore through the night. Equipment scattered, metal clattered against the hard earth. A flashlight rolled across the ground, its beam flickering wildly. Someone shouted. James, one of the younger researchers, was gone. His tent was empty, his belongings untouched. His radio lay on the ground, its static buzzing eerily through the silence. They searched, calling his name, their voices swallowed by the dense jungle. But there was no trace of him, no footprints leading away, no struggle. It was as if the jungle had simply taken him. Panic set in. Dr. Carter made the call, pack what they could and leave immediately. But as they scrambled to gather their gear, the air around them grew heavy, suffocating, like something unseen was pressing down on them. A sudden, sharp whisper, right next to Alex's ear. He spun around, but no one was there. Just empty space. Then, from the darkness, a pair of glowing eyes, watching, unblinking. And then, they blinked, and in that instant, the figure was gone. They ran. Abandoning their camp, abandoning their equipment, they sprinted through the jungle, their lungs burning, their hearts pounding. The sounds of pursuit followed them, branches snapping, leaves rustling, something moving fast behind them. But when they finally broke through the tree line, when they reached the safety of their vehicle, the jungle fell silent once more, as if whatever had chased them had let them go. But one thing was certain, James was gone, and the guerrilla forest had claimed another soul. The team didn't stop driving until they reached the nearest village, hours away from the jungle's edge. They stumbled out of the vehicle, breathless, drenched in sweat, their hands trembling. But nothing, not the exhaustion, not the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, could erase the fact that James was gone. The locals gathered around them, their faces solemn, their eyes filled with something that wasn't just sympathy. It was understanding. They had seen this before. They had warned them. And now, the jungle had taken what it was owed. Dr. Carter insisted they go back, that they search, that they bring a rescue team, but the villagers refused. No one enters the guerrilla forest once it has claimed someone. To go back would mean risking more lives. The jungle does not give back what it takes. Days passed, and still, no sign of James. Search teams were deployed, helicopters scanned the canopy, but no trace of him was ever found. No footprints, no clothing, nothing. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The official report would later state that he was lost to the elements, that he had wandered too far from camp, gotten disoriented, and succumbed to the jungle. But the team knew better. They knew what they had heard, what they had seen, and what they had felt watching them in the darkness. Weeks later, Alex, still haunted by that night, found something disturbing. While reviewing the last footage they had managed to salvage, he discovered a frame, a single corrupted image buried within the files. It was taken just moments before James disappeared. The picture was dark, blurry, almost unreadable. But in the center, barely visible between the trees, was a shape. A figure, tall, hunched, with glowing eyes staring directly into the lens. A figure that should not have been there. The team disbanded soon after, each carrying their own nightmares from that expedition. Dr. Carter never spoke publicly about what happened. Alex left research entirely, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed him back. And James? James was never seen again? But the villagers knew the truth. They still warn travelers to this day. Do not enter the guerrilla forest. Do not disturb what sleeps within, because once it sees you, it never forgets. Even now, years later, the mystery of the guerrilla forest remains unsolved. No new expeditions have dared to return to the exact location where James vanished. The jungle has reclaimed the abandoned campsite, swallowing any trace that the team was ever there. Scientists and skeptics dismiss the events as fear-induced hysteria, a combination of exhaustion, paranoia, and the unforgiving nature of the wilderness. They argue that James was simply lost, that the forest is vast and merciless, that there is nothing supernatural about a man disappearing in one of the most dangerous ecosystems on Earth. But those who were there that night know better. They remember the sounds, the impossible footprints, the eyes in the darkness. They remember the overwhelming presence that seemed to surround them, something that wasn't just the jungle, but something within it. The villagers still tell the story to those who come too close. They warn travelers, poachers, and explorers alike. Some listen, some do not. And occasionally, the forest claims another. Every so often, reports emerge of missing persons near the jungle's edge, locals who stray too far, tourists who ignore the warnings, researchers who think they can uncover the truth. But the truth is never found. Just silence. Just whispers among the trees. Just stories of glowing eyes watching from the shadows. If you ever find yourself deep in the rainforest, if the air grows heavy, if the jungle falls eerily silent, if you feel the weight of something unseen pressing against you, turn back. Do not run. Do not look for the source. Just leave, because some places are not meant to be explored. Some legends are not just myths, and some forests are not meant for humans at all.